Amy Knight from the Daily Beast reports. Was a Russian general murdered over the Steele dossier? The notorious dossier on Trump that Republicans want to discredit may well have been credible enough in Russian President Vladimir Putin's eyes to get at least one person killed. During his recently released August 2017 testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Glenn Simpson was asked about sources for the sensational Christopher Steele dossier, which Simpson's firm, Fusion GPS, commissioned. Responding for him, Simpson's lawyer, Joshua Levy, blurted out a surprising warning: somebody's already been killed as a result of the publication of this dossier. In his subsequent November testimony to the House Intelligence Committee, which was made available Thursday, Simpson denied knowing specific cases of people being killed because of the dossier, but he then noted cryptically that people literally risked their lives to tell us some of this stuff. In fact, there is evidence that at least one Russian was murdered because of Steele's revelations. Gen. Oleg Uravinkin of Russia's State Security Service, FSB. On the morning of December 26, 2016, Uravinkin, age 61, was found dead in his car in central Moscow. Life News, known to be a Kremlin mouthpiece, first claimed on its website that Uravinkin had been killed, but then quickly changed its story, saying simply that Uravinkin had died. FSB investigators were called immediately to the death scene, and news outlets soon reported that Uravinkin had succumbed to a heart attack. There was no more official Russian mention of him. Uravinkin, who joined the KGB, the FSB's predecessor, in 1976, had in the mid-1990s worked in the Russian presidential administration, where his job was to monitor compliance with security procedures. He was known as the keeper of the Kremlin's secrets. He then served under Igor Sakhin when the latter was deputy premier and subsequently followed Sakhin to Rosneft in 2012, after Sakhin became CEO of the state oil giant. Of all the officials who serve under Putin, Sakhin, himself a former KGB officer, is the most powerful. As chief administrator at Rosneft, Uravinkin was Sakhin's right-hand man and knew everything. Steele wrote in his dossier that a Russian source close to Rosneft President Igor Sakhin had confided details of a secret July 2016 meeting in Moscow between Sakhin and Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page. The two had allegedly discussed bilateral energy cooperation between the United States and Russia, along with the lifting of Ukraine-related economic sanctions against Russia. As a quid pro quo, Sakhin was said to have offered the Trump campaign up to 19% stake in Rosneft's stock. Page reportedly indicated that Trump, if elected president, would lift sanctions. Known to be sympathetic to the Kremlin, Page was apparently viewed by the Russian security services as a key object for advancing their interests with Trump. In 2013, an agent from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, met Page in New York City and engaged in several communications with him as part of a recruitment attempt. The Steele dossier mentions that Page also met on this same Moscow trip with Igor Daivakin, an FSB colonel who was at the time a senior official in the internal political department of the Russian presidential administration. Daivakin, who had previously served in the Presidential Security Service, the agency with the crucial responsibility of guarding the Russian president, reportedly told Page about compromising material the Russians had on Hillary Clinton and also conveyed to Page that the Kremlin had compromise on Trump, which Trump should consider in his dealings with Russia. When questioned by the House Intelligence Committee in November, Page denied knowing either Sakhin or Daivakin. But he also claimed that he met with no senior Russian officials while he was in Moscow in July 2016, and that turned out to be a lie. After Rep. Adam Schiff reminded Page of his July 8, 2016, email from Moscow to members of the Trump campaign saying that he had received incredible insights and outreach from senior members of Putin's administration. Page backtracked. He reluctantly admitted meeting with Russian Vice Premier Arkady Dvorkovich and also with Andrei Baranov, who is head of investor relations at Rosneft, a top management position that would put Baranov in frequent contact with Sakhin. Significantly, Baranov was awarded a medal for service to his country by Putin in March 2017. After insisting to the committee that he and Baranov only got together because they were old friends, Page was forced to acknowledge that the two may have discussed sanctions and also the potential sale of Rosneft's stock, which makes one wonder whether Sakhin was at the meeting as well. The plan to privatize part of Rosneft was not known outside of Rosneft's top management at this time, and it was a contentious issue, as was the proposed purchase by Rosneft of controlling shares in the oil company Basneft, which occurred in October. The sale of 19.5% of Rosneft shares to Qatar and the commodities giant Glencore was announced in early December. One high official who initially opposed both of these transactions was Minister of Economic Development Alexei Ulyukov, who was arrested in November 2016 on charges of taking a $2 million bribe from Sakhin. It was a classic sting operation, with Sakhin in charge, and after a sensational trial Ulyukov was sentenced in December to 8 years in a strict regime labor camp. Sakhin had been called to appear as a witness, but refused. In his stead, Page's friend Baranov appeared to testify against Ulyukov. According to the recent book by British journalist Luke Harding, Collusion, Secret Meetings, Dirty Money, and How Russia Helped Donald Trump Win, Steele denied that Iravinkin was a direct source for his report. But, as Harding told me recently, the information could nonetheless have originated with Iravinkin. And even it did not come from Iravinkin, he would have borne responsibility for the leaks, since he was the head of Rosneft's administration, with security part of his purview. The fatal question is not what he did, but what he was thought to have done. While the Ulyukov case and the Rosneft transactions certainly contribute to the intrigue around Iravinkin's death, it is more than likely that the Steele dossier did him in. Although the dossier was not published on the web until 2 weeks after Iravinkin died, the Kremlin was doubtless aware of its contents well before this. Simpson had conveyed much of the material to American journalists in the autumn of 2016, and, according to the Harding book, for months, reporters on the National Security Beat and Moscow correspondents had been working feverishly to substantiate the allegations. In fact, the arrests in December of high-level FSB officers responsible for cyber operations were widely assumed to be set off by Steele's revelations that the Trump campaign had colluded in the Russian cyber operations against the Clinton campaign that were revealed by U.S. intelligence agencies. However much Trump's defenders want to dismiss the dossier as a fake concocted by the president's enemies, the fallout from it in Russia, including at least one highly probable murder, suggests that much of what Steele reported is fact.